Welcome back to the channel. About 6 or 7 months ago, we had built ourselves a 9 to 10 ton compost wood chip pile, and we used that for free heating the entire winter. And we're gonna go check that out today, see if it's still active, and I want to talk about what we did. And based off Jean Payne's research himself, building this Jean Payne heating pile, we inoculated the pile with plenty of water. We got it full of moisture, and moisture is the #1 key to having good heat and continuing that process of using just wood chips to heat. We did things a little different this year. We didn't add a whole lot of nitrogen to the start of the pile. We ended up adding nitrogen at the end of winter because we were noticing fluctuations, basically like a wavelength up and down, and we didn't want to suffer in the springtime here. So we have all of these plants in the greenhouse, and I've showed all of our market plants, all of our farmers market plants, and the success we've had so far. It is an early spring, but we had lots of heat coming into this greenhouse, and we're going to discuss all that today. If that sounds interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel. Let's get into this. So we just had the camera set up on our stove here. This is our Jean Payne heater. Still flowing water, still blowing air, all of our lines running to and through our compost pile or through our transfer, just buried by wood chips as insulation. And we could have better insulation if we paid for insulation around all of those lines where they transfer out of the greenhouse and the 4-foot gap between the greenhouse and the compost pile. But we managed to blow plenty of heat and pump plenty of heat through the greenhouse floor, enough to keep all of our plants, market plants, alive throughout the winter and getting things going into early spring here. So as you notice, we took our piece of poly off of this pile here. There is a few spots where I notice activity from rodents, and I can definitely feel heat coming from the inside of this pile still. It is actively warm. So just digging down in here a bit, look how black that stuff is. So I can feel heat coming off of there. 103 degrees right under the surface. As we got a rain, it's cooling off now as it's releasing to the air, but we're basically creating dirt here, and that is very warm. Now we had about a 50-degree day. The sun is just now breaking, but you can see those nasty clouds. We've had rain and storms. It's been a very, very wet spring, which is normal, but for the most part, it has not been very sunny today. So I can see steam coming off there. We haven't had any sun to actively heat up this pile. We'll go check out and see how our actual thermometer for compost is looking. So, what? Sitting right under 100 degrees at the top half of the pile here. So we're still putting about 80, 90 degrees into the greenhouse through all of these transfer systems, through complete solar power, and this was an absolutely free heating source for the entire winter. Now, we've probably lost a ton and a half of matter just in the process of it breaking down. And even over on this little bit drier side, once you get down in here, it is very warm, very broken down, dark material. And this is how we're creating all of our own soil and stuff. I want to talk about the processes and the fluctuations in temperatures here. So just real quick, jumping back over to this side of the pile, we're still sitting at least 98 degrees or so, maybe 95. And that is buried straight down into the pile. Now I had that pretty well straight down, pointed right at the dead center of the pile there. So real quick, I just wanted to break down and talk about all of the fluctuations we saw without using a whole lot of nitrogen. A lot of people ask what we use for nitrogen. Oh, I don't have enough nitrogen. Coming up with nitrogen sources. So when you do have a lack of nitrogen, you can add urine, you can mix up a slurry of farmyard waste, any type of animal manure, you can use urea, you can literally order pellets of nitrogen and mix that into a bucket of water, inoculate this entire pile. So our experiment, we ran for about 4 to 5 months off of just water and wood chips, old and new. So we had plenty of carbon and plenty of fresh nitrogen in those fresh new wood chips. So being able to acquire all these free wood chips is a huge plus for us because we're not spending a penny. All of these investments we've made with all of our systems, copper, PEX tubing, pumps, solar panels, thermometers, all the like, even the fencing to hold this compost pile. We've invested that one time. We've been doing this for several years now. Anybody who's been following along, you can see the development. You can see all of the things that do change and all of the things that we just reuse year after year, and all of the free heating we're able to achieve from these free resources. So let's break this down. Month 1 through 3 was fluctuating between 120 and 145 degrees. Here comes the sun a little bit. Feels good on me. It's only about 55 degrees outside. 55, and we've got 100+ degree pile still. And all of that rain definitely helped it. We threw nitrogen on it a couple months ago. So this thing has been cooking for 6 to 7 months now. And that's a huge win for us. We could let this thing cook all summer, but we're gonna slowly start taking it apart, and we're going to be dispersing it throughout our whole entire property, feeding our food forest items and feeding all of our fruit trees and stuff like that, while we're able to create a whole bunch of free soil. So this is all sifted stuff here, and I showed this in the free black gold video, DIY black gold. If you haven't checked that out, definitely check that out. So we've got a whole entire bin full of free sifted soil. Like, we've made our own soil just basically from wood chips and nitrogen and a little bit of green matter, chicken poo, urine, our own urine. We like to be as self-sufficient as possible, so utilizing all those free resources, there's no shame in our game. If you gotta pee on a compost pile because you don't have any other nitrogen, then so be it. You gotta pee on a compost pile. So as I was saying, month 1 through 3 was between 120 degrees and 145 degrees. We didn't get up to the very hot point of 165. We didn't overcook the pile and burn it out fast. So using a ton of water, and I showed that in the buildup of this video where the tractor was dumping all the wood chips and I was just hosing down and just completely saturating those wood chips as they were being dumped. The ones that weren't completely soaked or completely fresh, I really wanted to get those wet because that is the major factor in getting a hot compost pile with just wood chips or wood chips and nitrogen. You have to have that water. You've got to have it absolutely soaked because those wood chips soak up so much water, so much more water than a normal compost pile. So let's jump from month 3 to month 4.5 here. So that was right in the middle of winter. We saw negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 40 degrees Celsius, give or take. So it was absolutely freezing, and the shell of our pile was dropped down to about 60, 70, 75 degrees within the first foot of our pile. So the heat coming from the inside of that compost pile was definitely making a difference and radiating out. We were obviously losing some heat because we don't have any insulation on the outside. We didn't use leaf bags to insulate the entire pile because I wanted to do a different kind of experiment, just as big as I possibly could, 9-10 tons, and we wanted to not insulate it and see if we could keep that core going the entire winter, and we achieved it. So the inside of the pile was reading about 110 to about 120 degrees, while the outer shell was 60 to 70. And yes, the top 6 inches, top 4 inches was definitely reading negative 20 degrees. So within the range of 4 inches all the way down to about a foot and a half, the temperatures definitely fluctuated. And then once we got to the 2-foot mark inside that compost pile, we were holding active temperatures. We were holding summertime composting temperatures when it was negative 40 degrees Celsius outside. After that really cold spell, we had the polar vortex come down. So month 4.5 to 5 to month 6 and 7, now here we are in the very early spring. We've had a very early spring here. So from those months, we definitely had to add some nitrogen because we were seeing major fluctuations because we were starting to burn the pile out. It didn't have all the moisture it needed. We had to inoculate it with some nitrogen. All the nitrogen from those fresh wood chips was definitely burning out, having a 9 to 10 ton pile. So Jean Payne himself had 50-ton piles. So you can see just how he was achieving free heat without having to add any nitrogen. He was just throwing giant piles of wood chips and making sure that they were saturated with water, and he was achieving free heat for many months at a time. And 6 to 7 months bearing through a polar vortex. I am super stoked that we were able to achieve this again, yet another year of free compost heating, and I hope everybody was able to look back, check all these videos out. And if you're new to the channel, I encourage you to go check out the Jean Pain compost heating catalog or playlist that we have, because that's where we put all of the videos related to compost heating. So there is a lot of buildup. We started in a very small greenhouse with very small piles and figuring it all out on our own and doing research from Jean Pain. So back to the 4.5 month to 7 month period where we are now, those temperatures had definitely spiked as soon as we dropped that nitrogen and inoculated it back in with a bunch of water. We pulled our tarp off, let it snow on it, let that snow melt, which is a great source of nitrogen. Also minuscule, yes, because the snowflakes do trap a minute amount of nitrogen from the air as they're forming crystals, fall, and then they soak into our pile very slowly. So snow is a great resource in the winter time. It doesn't seem like you would want to put snow on your compost pile, but that thing was still warm enough to melt that snow. We put all the snow on there, put the tarp back on, our clear poly, so if we get a sunny day, that definitely helps rejuvenate the pile and it helps melt that snow and get that moisture into the center of the pile while absorbing all of the nitrogen and inoculants that we had to put on it to keep those temperatures from fluctuating so much. So we saw those temperatures going down to about 70 degrees 2 foot in, so closer to the center of the pile we were seeing lower temperatures. So that's what led me to inoculate the pile with nitrogen, rejuvenate it, and now you can see that right under the surface, 6 inches in, we have 102, 104 degrees. So that tells me that we did something right. We're still putting heat in even though the doors are open. It's only about 55 degrees out here right now, but the fact that we were still able and are still able, if we have a very cold spell, I can close these doors up, we can heat the greenhouse with compost. So if need be, we could definitely put some heat into that greenhouse still, even though we're probably going to start tearing the one side apart of this compost pile, wood chip pile. We're going to start dispersing all of those broken down minerals and nutrients to all of our plants, like I said. But in the true self-sufficient mindset, we spent $0 to heat this greenhouse through the entire winter, running it off of all of our solar power with all of these systems that we've used for 4+ years without fail, all off solar power, just using the sun's energy and the heat from compost to keep plants alive the entire winter. So the sun is finally starting to peek out. It feels really good on my back after a whole day of rain and clouds. So it's been windy and crappy out here. We've been doing a bunch of work in the greenhouse. We just opened up the doors, kind of letting it breathe a little bit now that the wind died down. So not only did we get to heat our greenhouse for free off of compost and solar power, we were able to provide 8+ tons of very rich, broken down, and relatively seed-free material to all of our property, our whole entire 3.5 acres. So before this video gets too much longer here, I've had you guys in my shed because we've had intermittent rain. Don't want to get the camera wet. We've got all of our items hanging here, just trying to dry everything out. And we really intended to create a zero waste and zero cost heating system for our greenhouse, and we succeeded. We've got 100-degree temps on a compost pile that's been there for 7 months. We transferred all that through water and air into the greenhouse. We did light our stove from time to time when the temperatures dropped and we wanted to come out here and be warmer than 50 degrees, but for the most part we kept the temperatures right around 50 degrees Fahrenheit through the winter time here, even when it was absolutely freezing outside. Got my son's koi fish here. Got our little transfer system. Just trying to do a good little permaculture pond in the greenhouse. Very interesting to observe the fish in here. We have so many plants coming up in here. We've already been hitting the market selling all of these tomatoes, peppers, basils, everything. We've got tons and tons of warm season crops here. That was a quick tour of the greenhouse and all of the plants. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this, checking this out. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, definitely drop those in the comments below. We always love to hear all of our subscribers' ideas, comments, questions, concerns. I'd like to thank you guys for checking this one out. We are going to get back to work here, and a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed to us. We really enjoy doing this, so hopefully many more years to come of compost heating and expanding upon the system and sharing everything and all our findings with everybody on here.